Hey folks, it's Chris, and I want to talk about Batman. Again, what can I say? The character fascinates me. He just seems so versatile. I mean, how does the same character that was in the 1960s campy Adam West TV show evolve into something as gritty and realistic as the Christopher Nolan era of Batman, and then, just a few years later essentially, become something as funny as the Lego Batman? Well, I believe that it's the fact that Batman gets reinvented by its creators almost every decade. I mean, the Batman of the 1930s was out shooting criminals, but then by the 50s, he was getting goofier and more sci-fi. The era in particular that I want to look at today is 1970s Batman. I've always had a pet theory that Batman of that era, and specifically writer Denny O'Neil, who crafted a lot of the stories in the early 70s throughout the decade, I think that he was very influenced by the James Bond movies of the day. I mean, James Bond was a globe-trotting detective in a sense. Yes, he was a spy, but he was also a guy that dressed up as a wealthy, like millionaire essentially. That was frequently his disguise, and he just wooed women, went up against supervillains. I think that there were a lot of similarities, and I think that the Batman comics of the 70s played very heavily into that. We're going to take a look at a mid-70s Batman comic in just a moment, one that I find very amusing. But real quick, just to explain my theory a little bit further, here are what I consider some of the key James Bond tropes that Batman would also use. We had globe-trotting investigation. We had the fact that he's an amazing fighter. He went up against supervillains that want to control or rule the world. There were always gadgets. He was a ladies' man. And he was perfect at everything from flying planes to mastering foreign languages. So without any further ado, let's jump right into 1974's Detective Comics number 440, written by Archie Goodwin and illustrated by Sal Amendola. We begin the issue in a famous upscale club in Gotham City, and some hillbillies are shoving aside the maitre d' and going to abduct some server called Sarah Beth. Now, they call this place the Play Hour Club. It's pretty obvious a riff on the Playboy Club, so let's just hope that in the future Mew Mefner hires two maitre d's to deal with the riffraff. Then again, now that I think of that, if they hired Two-Face would just rob it. So you just can't win in Gotham City. You're going to get robbed. As Sarah Beth gets abducted by the two hillbillies with shotguns, the maitre d' starts to call the police, but the phone is literally shot out of his hand. Now, is this man extremely lucky or extremely unlucky? Now, obviously, we could argue that he's lucky because the shotgun blast blows up the phone, but doesn't seem to blow his fingers clean off. That's lucky. Then again, the fact is, he's getting shot at in the first place. So, unlucky? Meanwhile, Batman's alter ego Bruce Wayne was apparently in the club, and he crawls away like a total coward while his girlfriend asks, "Bruce Wayne, where do you think you're going at a time like this?" "To complain to the manager, kitten. Our tornadoes flambe won't be worth eating by the time this is over." Oh, Bruce. While it's only a panel showing that Bruce Wayne is on a date, the 70s comics really emphasized Bruce Wayne's love life. And it was a sharp contrast to really just a handful of issues in the past that he and Robin were hanging out in the mansion with their Aunt Harriet. It was very much based on the 60s TV show, and then the 70s came along, and all of a sudden Robin got out of the house and was permanently with the Teen Titans. Bruce Wayne became a lot more of a bachelor, a man about town, and he sort of embraced a little bit of being Bruce Wayne. The two hillbillies pull Sarah Beth out into the streets where they've got a pickup truck waiting, and one shouts to the other, "Hustlerin', Aaron, we got a long drive to Dark Hill County." But on the next page, Batman is standing there. How exactly does Batman decide when to sneak away and become Batman? I mean, for all he knew, those hillbillies would have turned around and started shooting patrons, and he wouldn't have been there for that because he's already left. But I guess this guy needs a few minutes to put on his suit. A lot of superheroes like Spider-Man or Superman, they wear their costume under their normal everyday clothes. But Batman can't really do that because he's got a cape, a utility belt, a cowl. None of that stuff is something he can carry around on his person. So he pretty much always has to at some point just go like, "All right, I hope this situation can deal without me for a few minutes." Batman attacks the hillbillies in a sequence that I like to call comic book time. Now, Batman is obviously swinging on this pole and kicking into a moving car at a very fast speed. Yet, one of the hillbillies has enough time to explain exactly what's happening, like it's some sort of play-by-play. "Judas, he leapt to that pole faster than a bat out of... Let me have him." And by the time the running commentary is done, Batman has finally had time to kick the shotgun that's just inches from Sarah Beth's face. Batman might be escalating things a little bit more than is strictly necessary. Batman grabs the steering wheel and crashes the pickup truck into a snowbank. Jumping from that pole into a moving car, yeah, that's the kind of physical perfection that I think that Batman and James Bond excel at. As Batman roughs up one of the hillbillies asking what their goal is, the girl, Sarah Beth, starts to explain, begging Batman not to hit him, saying, "I know it sounds crazy, but horrible as they seem, they're my brothers. They believe they're doing right in their own twisted way." So her brothers are basically trying to bring her back home, and Batman is hit in the back of the head by a shotgun barrel, and it knocks him out. I like this era of Batman because he's very impressive. Like, there's no question that he's a superhero. At the same time, he has human limitations. He can get knocked out by an ordinary guy who sneaks up from behind. I feel like these days, the only people that can sneak up behind Batman are uber competent ninjas, and the only people that can knock him out are roided up He-Men. Apparently medical skills are not in Batman's repertoire, as he thinks that bandaging his head up is going to be a solution to a concussion. I'm not so sure that that's going to help much. Meanwhile, he's put Alfred to work, who's poring over microfilmed maps to find a remote corner of the Appalachians called either Dark Hill County or Ghost Mountain, as Batman had heard the hillbillies say. Alfred even points out that it's really far outside of the city and that it's late at night. But Batman insists that he's going to save that girl. And sure enough, in the next panel, Batman is in Dark Hill County. At first, he talks to an old man at a gas station who hears about Ghost Mountain and just slams a door in his face. And then Batman goes to talk to the sheriff, who we're about to realize is a total jerk. The Appalachians may not seem as exotic as Bermuda or the Alps, but at the same time, so many of Batman's stories took place only within the confines of Gotham City that any time he leaves is a big deal. And he started doing that more and more throughout the 70s. So for this, he's left the city and he's in the deep Appalachian Mountains. I also feel like these pages exhibit some horror movie tropes. I mean, the weird old guy at the gas station that, warns you, "Oh, don't go that way, there's trouble." Or a total jerk authority figure who won't believe you or listen to you. So Batman is entering something that's very close, I think, to a horror movie. The fact that we've already got these hillbillies sort of reminds me of Deliverance, which had come out just 2 years earlier. So I think that that could have easily been an influence as well. Batman explains that he's looking for Sarah Beth Tull, but the sheriff just acts like a total jerk and says, it's not worth our time to look after those Tulls. Plus, I've already been up in the mountains looking for their moonshine stills, and I've been tramping around in the snow all night. I'm not interested in going out there to help. From there, the sheriff tells Batman about the legend of the Tull family who live on Ghost Mountain. Local superstition says that Granny Tull leads the family. Some say that she's a witch. Others say that the family was cursed by Indians many generations ago. No matter what, there have definitely been some deaths up there recently. So the sheriff absolutely refuses to get involved, and he tells his deputy to just show Batman to the trail up to Ghost Mountain, and that's as much as they're going to get involved. That kind of sounds borderline illegal. If you're the law and you hear that somebody's in trouble in your jurisdiction, aren't you obligated to investigate? Well, I'm sure being a jerk will pay off in the long run. Batman quickly stumbles across the clan, the Tull clan, and it looks like a funeral's about to take place. And on the next page we see that they are actually planning some sort of ritualistic sacrifice. The story is about to get borderline offensive for both people that live out in remote areas and Native Americans. Granny Tull explains that the first of the Tull clan made his peace with what she calls the Injuns by sacrificing himself and earning the right for his family to live on their land, Ghost Mountain. No comment. Batman immediately gives up the element of surprise and just shouts, "No!" and jumps from a pretty far distance away to run and grab Sarah Beth, even though at least two of these guys are armed. Fortunately, Granny Tull insists that one of them does not shoot because he'd risk hitting his own kinsman. And Batman is quickly mobbed by the whole group of men and taken to the ground. Granny Tull and the original two hillbillies take Sarah Beth away and chain her to some trees and light a fire to kill her. I really do like the moody, atmospheric art by Sal Amendola. I'm not as familiar with his work as I am with another Batman artist of this era, Jim Aparo, who I believe did the cover to this issue. At least he's credited as the cover artist. I liked Aparo's art a lot, but that's what I grew up with reading back issues of Batman. But this art is also, it's really good. I like it. The story shifts focus to Sarah Beth's perspective, and she hears sounds approaching in the evening forest. We can see that she's really scared, and then all of a sudden Batman appears. That's actually a really good reveal. He beat those guys off panel, but we didn't necessarily know that he was going to be able to. So instead of following that fight and seeing him win, I like that this story focused on Sarah Beth's perspective for at least a couple panels. Batman then picks the lock on her wrists in about 2 seconds, and all of a sudden a huge monster breaks out of the woods. And Sarah Beth screams, "Oh my God, it's real! Real!" Lockpicking counts as a gadget in my opinion. If it goes in the utility belt, it's a gadget. And James Bond may have eventually had some pretty out there gadgets like pills that made people expand like balloons and weird alligator costumes. But originally, his gadgets were way simpler. We're talking just some extra money hidden in a briefcase. Things like that. That was his gadget back in From Russia with Love, the second movie. So throughout the 60s and into the early 70s, his gadgets weren't too over the top. And neither, for the most part, were Batman's of the 70s. It was much more grounded. Batman doesn't panic when seeing the monster. Instead, we're told most men would freeze. The Batman reacts. Strength honed from boyhood comes against a chain he holds. Strength that links of iron might still resist, but not age-deadened wood. And from there, Batman rips out the chains and starts clobbering the beast, which it turns out is a bear, burned and scarred sometime by fire. Hatred of the flames is making it attack. Now things get weird in this short story. Batman doesn't have any sort of knockout pellets or anything like that. Instead, he jumps on top of this poor bear, strangles it with the chain, rides it through the flames and catches the bear on fire, and then rides the bear right off of a cliff to its death. Holy crap! Batman just set a bear on fire and rode it off a cliff. There is nothing he can't do. Sarah Beth runs to the edge of the cliff. Batman, poor Batman, he leaped in time to this ledge, Sarah Beth, and perhaps into some answers. So Batman leapt back onto the cliff and he smells something. He goes into a nearby cave and realizes that there's a still for making moonshine there, and whoever built that moonshine still set the cave on fire to burn the bear out in the first place. Then Batman makes a very strange deductive leap, especially for the world's greatest detective. He looks and says, hey, there's mud in here, and in the next panel, he's knocking out the sheriff. Why? Batman argues that he saw this mud on the sheriff's boots when he first met him. And yeah, there was a shot showing that there was mud on the sheriff's boots. But Batman's argument is that the sheriff said that he was out in the snow, but there was mud on his boots. Well, yeah, snow melts. I mean, we don't know exactly how long ago he was outside. Presumably when snow melts, there can be mud on your boots. It's very strange to me that Batman could quickly identify the exact type of mud and with absolute confidence knocks out the sheriff. But he's Batman, so of course he's right. Problem solved. The Tull family was never running illegal moonshine. Sarah Beth has been freed. No one's been killed except for the bear. Now, when Batman rode that bear, I started to wonder, how easy or difficult is that to do? So you know what we're going to do? I'm going to go find a mechanical bull and see if I can stay on it for even a few seconds. Because Batman rode a bear off of a cliff, and that bear was on fire too. I can't do that, but let's see if I can do the mechanical bull. The answer is no. I cannot ride a mechanical bull. Not at all. All right. So, let's see. We hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 5 out of the 6 tropes that I came up with that help define what a James Bond movie is. So, in my opinion, the Batman stories of the 1970s were heavily influenced by the James Bond movies. The Bond movies were the most popular action movies of their time. And I think that it helped drive the Batman stories in the comics in the direction that they went. I think that the outside world absolutely has always influenced Batman. And I think that it continues to do so. I think that he, surprisingly enough, is an incredibly versatile character. And I say surprisingly because at its core, I mean, he's still a millionaire, you know? He's a rich guy who's lost both of his parents. Those aren't necessarily things we can all relate to. He doesn't necessarily have the same problems that we do or come from the same background that a lot of us can relate to. But there's something about him that still feels grounded compared to a lot of other superheroes. I find it interesting. This story was an absolute delight. I will never get tired of seeing Batman ride a burning bear off of a cliff. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and come on back next week for some Wonder Woman stories. Until next week, keep reading comics.